This week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim may have had one of the most annoying cliffhanger endings I have seen in quite some time. It really snuck up on me. Make sure to check out our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. Episode 4 is in the description box below. So, is it just me, or did this week's episode just fly by? Like, really, just it went out of nowhere. When that ending theme finally kicked in at the very end of this week's episode, I jumped out of my chair and just said, "Damn it, no! I cannot believe it did that." This week's episode was also pretty good, despite the fact that really not that much happened. But what I really loved about it is that we actually got some more scenes with Origami, the sadistic psychopathic serial killer who seems like he's going to have a very strange connection with Shinichi. What I really love about this guy is that we finally got a little bit of backstory on him. And it's not so much backstory as it is just reinforcement that this guy is a sadistic psychopathic serial killer who just loves to stab people. And then we cut to the present day and we learn that he's actually starting to notice all these parasites are starting to take over, and he even follows one of them down to that underground garage. This is where he runs into something out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, blood, bodies everywhere, and then suddenly he realizes he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had run into the police and he ends up getting captured and being forced to work with the investigation team. That brings us to Hirama and this brand new character by the name of Yamagishi. Yamagishi is a badass. Why is he a badass? Because he has a scar on his face. Case in point, the guy's already pretty freaking awesome. But they're getting ready to have this big operation where they're going to try and capture Goto and his parasites and try to save these people all at the same time with this a really elaborate fake ploy, which is going to involve a fake gunman. However, they're going to need some help. Not only do they have Origami who's helping them out, but they're going to need Shinichi because he's had so many encounters with the parasites and seems to know their weakness, which apparently one of them are Flamethrowers. Just another great reference to John Carpenter's The Thing. The parasites themselves have always reminded me of the creatures from John Carpenter's The Thing. Just the way they look when they're constantly changing into different faces and morphing and all just the weird tendrils and gooiness and it's creepy. What is kind of bittersweet about this scene is that things are actually finally getting back to normal for Shinichi. He's finally getting back to his normal life. Things for him and Murano are working out, he's breaking track records in school, and he's getting ready to graduate. Things are actually looking up, and then he's finally dragged into this big operation where he's going to have to work with Origami and try to figure out who these parasites are. And at the end of the episode, it almost seems like it's going to go way farther because they finally figure out who the very first parasite is because they're bringing out these people in groups of 7. They're looking at them through these x-rays and all these different scanners. You got Origami and Shinichi watching, and then it's this woman, and then Yamagishi notices, alright, this is our very first hit. And then as soon as something looks like it's about to happen, boom! There it comes, the ending song of Parasyte the Maxim, which will either get you really excited for next week's episode or piss you off. So, what's the rundown? On this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim, this was a pretty good one that's only got me more excited for watching next week's episode, just because of the way it ended right there. But I really love that Shinichi is finally starting to work with the investigation team. That's something that I was really hoping was going to happen eventually, although he's not really telling them everything. Like, he can't tell them about Migi and everything quite yet, and I don't even think that's something that Migi would like to do at all. And there was a nice scene with this week where Migi was describing how the Flamethrowers would help them and how that would be really instrumental in how they're actually going to stop them, and I just can't wait to see how this is going to escalate, because we're getting very close to the end of the series, and obviously the biggest obstacle for Shinichi at this point has to be Goto, the guy with the multiple parasites in his body, and I can just imagine with all these people around and everything, this is probably not going to be very pretty. It's probably going to get very violent and very massacre-ish. All I know is this week's episode was very nice. If anything, it's just great to see Shinichi finally be Shinichi again, because, the whole, hole in his heart arc, which is basically the most of the first half of the series, is really instrumental in terms of his development, and you can really see the difference, just the way his mannerisms and just things in this week's episode, and it's little attentions to detail like that make this a pretty good show. Otherwise, I'm just really liking how everything is ramping up at the end, especially with all of these mercenaries coming in. The Yamagishi character, who I think is pretty awesome, who when I saw him for the first time, my first thought is this guy's a parasite, and who knows, there could be some sort of twist with this character. I'm not really sure where that's heading. All I know is this was a pretty decent episode right here, which is a nice setup for next week's episode, which I think is going to be really good. Really nothing too mind-blowing this week, but still I think it was pretty decent, and there was a few origami scenes I would have appreciated maybe a little bit more, but at least they're getting into his backstory just a little bit. They're probably saving him more for the end of the series as well as for Goto. So I'm excited. This was a pretty decent episode of Parasyte the Maxim. A little slow in some parts, and some people probably aren't going to like this little break that we're taking before we get to the finale, but honestly I think this is the nice pause we get before we get to the finale, because things are probably just going to get really insane from here. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. Very high quality episode, good animation, artwork, and pretty much everything that you'd expect from the rest of Parasyte the Maxim. So check it out, fans of the anime version, or if you consider yourself a fan of Parasyte the Maxim or Parasyte the manga version, whatever it's called, you can check it out too. It's a pretty good series. Good stuff. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim. What are you hoping to see from the conclusion of the series? If you guys have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. And make sure to follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter. And make sure to check out our brand new video podcast series, The Powerful Nerdcast. Episode 4 will be at the very end of this video.